San Francisco woke up to one of those quiet storylines that only feels quiet until you start lining the pieces up. One veteran move could free up real money and keep this offense steady. A wild wide receiver dream is getting floated, and it's already splitting the faithful into two camps. A young back barely touched the field last year, but somehow became a talking point straight from Shanahan's mouth. And a major award just put a spotlight on what this locker room is really about. Which one of those clues has you the most on edge? You're not going to believe what we've got today, so settle in, hit that like button, and let's get into it. When John Lynch says the team is going to have a little more flexibility this offseason, that isn't just something you say to fill airtime at a podium. That's a signal. People instantly start doing cap math, staring at contracts, trying to guess where the room comes from. And yeah, there's been plenty of talk about how Brandon Ayuk's situation could affect the numbers, depending on how it gets finalized. But here's the thing. There's a cleaner, very 49ers way to create space, and it's the move they lean on all the time. Extend the guy you already know is elite. Trent Williams is the heartbeat of the left side, and he's heading into the final year of his deal in 2026. And you can already feel what's coming next. Mock draft season hits, and suddenly every other week it's 49ers need to prepare for life after Trent. My pushback is simple. Life after Trent can wait because there hasn't been a real sign of decline. If you watched his 2025 tape with even one honest rewatch, it tells you he's still one of the best tackles on the planet. He's even hinted he wants to play into his 40s, and honestly, with the way he moves, why wouldn't he? The dude still plays with that nasty edge, and it changes how defenses call a game from the jump. Zoom out for a second and look at the bigger board. Extending Trent doesn't just keep an all-pro in the building. It can also open up a meaningful chunk of 2026 cap space, enough to shift your offseason from tight and careful to we can actually make choices. And that matters because continuity on the offensive line in this system isn't some luxury add-on. It's survival. If you're likely looking for a new starter at left guard, who do you want next to him? Some average tackle or Trent Williams setting the tone, cleaning up little errors, making protections feel automatic? That's how you keep Brock Purdy's feet calm and the timing routes hitting on schedule. So when Lynch talks flexibility, I hear urgency under the surface. The window is still open and the front office wants options, real options. The question is what you do with that room. One massive swing or 2 or 3 moves that deepen the roster for a playoff run. Be honest, what scares defenses more? And while that cap conversation is still bouncing around, the wide receiver talk is where the arguments get loud, fast. 2025 didn't just expose a need at receiver, it screamed it. Ayuk missed the entire year, and at this point the vibe around the team is that he's not part of the 2026 picture. Ricky Pearsall couldn't stay fully available. Juwan Jennings is headed toward free agency in 2026. So what used to feel like we can survive this suddenly becomes we need an answer. Not a gadget, not a maybe. A guy defenses actually respect when it's 3rd and long and the windows are tight. That's why this dream scenario started bubbling up. Justin Jefferson. Yeah, I know, it sounds like Madden. It sounds like fan fiction. Dreams rarely come true, and it's worth saying that out loud before anyone runs too far with it. But the reason his name even gets mentioned is because Minnesota's timeline feels messy. They just went 9-8, and there's uncertainty at quarterback with J.J. McCarthy still needing time. When a team isn't sure who's driving, everything else starts wobbling, especially how long a superstar wants to wait around for consistent QB play. So the thought experiment gets pretty ruthless. If the Vikings ever decided to reset the clock and start hoarding premium picks to chase their next franchise quarterback, what's the fastest way to do it? You trade the crown jewel and stack first rounders. None of that is easy, and it would take a monster package. Let me say this, you can understand why it's being floated, and you can understand why it pokes the bay the way it does, because we've lived the difference between good enough at receiver and this changes the whole offense. Go back to those 2 losses to Seattle. Think about the snaps where Purdy needed separation on time and it just wasn't there. When spacing gets tight, when it's 3rd and long, when you need chunk plays without praying for a busted coverage, elite separators tilt the field. Jefferson isn't just another receiver. He bends coverage by himself. He forces defenses into bad choices. And with an aging core and the window not getting any wider, that's why the idea lands the way it does. If you're going all in, he's the kind of move that actually feels like going all in. You're forcing teams to pick their poison every snap. But you can't live on dreams alone. You've got to build the next layer of the roster too, especially behind your stars, because that's what gets you through a long season and into a real playoff push. Which brings us back to that exit press conference and a name that almost slipped by the headlines, Jordan James. He barely played in 2025, got a few garbage time snaps, and for most fans he was out of sight, out of mind. Yet Shanahan brought him up with real energy. And Shanahan doesn't hand out praise like it's a participation trophy. He basically said James was ready to go down the stretch and that he's excited about what he can become with a strong offseason. That matters because when Shanahan trusts the back, that back touches the football. A lot. But the tension is obvious. If James was ready, why didn't we see him? And this is where 49ers fans start arguing, because we've seen this movie before. Shanahan's relationship with rookies is complicated. The playbook is demanding, the pass pro responsibilities are serious, and if he doesn't think you're airtight, you're not seeing the field. It's frustrating, but it also explains why the guys who do earn it usually look ready for prime time the moment they finally get real snaps. And it's fair to point out there were moments where giving James a real look made sense, especially when Christian McCaffrey popped up on the injury report late before that Titans game. That felt like the perfect test drive week, and it didn't happen. So now the story flips into 2026. James won't be a rookie anymore, and the roster math points toward him being the primary backup. If Brian Robinson Jr. hits free agency, the door opens wide. If James stays healthy and stacks good practices all offseason, he can lock that job down. And if he doesn't, you already know this front office won't hesitate to look elsewhere. Which is why the emotional center of this whole day is McCaffrey himself. The Pro Football Writers of America voting him Comeback Player of the Year isn't just a trophy. It's the league acknowledging what he did after missing 13 games in 2024. And a lot of people doubted he'd make it through a full season healthy. Let's not rewrite history. That "yeah, but can he hold up" question followed him every week, even after big games. He answered it with production and consistency. He led the NFL in receiving yards by a running back, finished with the second most yards from scrimmage in the entire league, and became the first player ever to hit at least 5 rushing touchdowns and at least 5 receiving touchdowns in the same season. That's not normal. That's not nice versatility. That's a player redefining what a weapon looks like, week after week, without blinking. Shanahan's reaction said even more than the stats. He talked about McCaffrey as a warrior, someone who lives the routine, who prepares every day like it's a playoff game, who finds a way even when the schedule gets ugly and the body is screaming. 17 straight games, the bye not arriving until December, then showing up again when the pressure spikes late. That's culture. That's leadership you don't fake. And it hits different when it comes from a coach who's seen a lot of great players up close. And it puts the franchise into a very specific mindset. When McCaffrey is healthy, the ceiling rises, period. He's also a finalist for MVP and Offensive Player of the Year. And even if he doesn't win those, the message is clear. This team still has superstar fuel. The question is whether the front office acts like it, because the league is not going to wait for you to get comfortable. Because when you stack everything we talked about, it's one connected storyline. Extending Trent Williams keeps the foundation strong and creates flexibility. The receiver situation, especially with Ayuk no longer in the plan, forces the team to decide whether it's swinging big or building smart depth. Jordan James is a reminder that development matters if you want a real playoff run. And McCaffrey's award is proof that the identity of this team can still carry you if you protect it and maximize it. So here we are. The red and gold isn't fading. It's at a crossroads. What's your first move if you're running the board? Lock in Trent, chase a true WR1, or build the backfield to keep CMC fresh for January? Drop your take in the comments, hit like if you're riding with the faithful, and make sure you're subscribed, because this offseason is already getting spicy, and we're going to argue through every single move together.